"Please don't take the cloth off," she begged, but the rancher did. The barn was supposed to be quiet. For Elias Thorne, that quiet was the only thing he had left. He lived a life measured in sun and seasons out on the Montana prairie where the wind was the only thing that had much to say. He was a man who owned a piece of land, a set of calloused hands, and a silence he'd built around himself like a fence. Ranching wasn't a job. It was a way to keep the ghosts of the past from getting too close. But that day, something broke the quiet dot. It wasn't a loud sound, just a whisper, a snag in the fabric of the afternoon. Elias froze, his hand over a piece of rusted tack he'd been meaning to fix for a month. His eyes faded as an old denim shirt scanned the dark corners of the barn. He was alone. He was always alone. But the sound was real. He moved slow, his boots kicking up dust that danced in the sunlight slanting through the boards. And then he saw it, a heap of something in the corner that didn't belong. An old horse blanket, lumped over something breathing. A stray dog, maybe. The land was full of lonely things. He reached for the blanket, slow, the way you'd approach a spooked horse. As his fingers brushed the wool, the whisper came again, clearer this time. A young woman's voice, raw with a terror so pure it felt like ice. "Please, don't take the cloth off." Elias pulled his hand back like he'd touched a hot stove. He'd faced down blizzards, droughts, the snarl of a cornered wolf. But this was different. His heart, usually a steady drum, started beating a rhythm he hadn't felt in years. Every instinct told him to back away, leave it be. But another instinct, one he thought he'd buried a long time ago with his wife, Martha, wouldn't let him walk away. He took a breath, the air thick with hay and fear, and pulled the cloth. What he saw shattered his quiet world in a single heartbeat. For a long moment, Elias just stood there, the horse blanket hanging from his fist. His mind, usually a simple and orderly thing, was spinning, a runaway, maybe. But that plea, "Please, don't take the cloth off," it wasn't a challenge. It was the last prayer of someone who expected nothing but pain. He let the blanket drop. Curled on the dirt floor was a girl, barely more than that, trying to make herself small enough to disappear. That's when the memory hit him, not a soft thing, but a sharp piece of shrapnel. Martha, in the last few weeks, her body so frail. The helplessness he'd felt then. The quiet rage that he couldn't protect her from the one thing a strong fence couldn't stop. This was different. This was a danger he could face. He took a step back, and the old floorboards groaned. The girl flinched, a sob catching in her throat. It was the sound of a creature that had learned every sound, was a threat, and that sound did more to break through the walls around Elias's heart than anything else. He could go back to the house, call the sheriff, make it someone else's problem. It would be the smart thing, the safe thing. But he looked at her, at the fear coming off her in waves, and he knew he couldn't. Leaving her there felt like a betrayal of the man Martha had married, a betrayal of her memory. He knelt down, his old knees cracking in protest. He had to see. He reached out and pulled the rest of the cloth away, and what he saw made his blood run cold. It wasn't the bruises on her cheek or the cut on her lip. It was a wrist. Locked around it was a crude shackle of rusted iron. A short, thick chain ended in a broken link. Jagged and sharp, this wasn't a runaway. This was an escapee. The shackle told a story of a horror he couldn't begin to imagine. In that instant, Elias Thorne's stoicism didn't just crack, it turned to dust. A white-hot rage filled him, not for the girl, but for the monster who put that iron on her. And right behind the rage was something else, something he hadn't felt in a decade. It was the protector in him, the part he thought had died with. Martha roaring back to life. The girl must have seen the change in his face, because she flinched, expecting a blow. Her fear broke through his anger. He saw a child so broken she couldn't tell the difference between a monster and a man. "Please," she whispered, her voice raw. "Don't let him find me. Please. Caleb will find me." The name hung in the air. Caleb. The name of the monster. And with that name, Elias knew his life had been split into, the time before he pulled back that cloth, and everything that would come after. The quiet was over. "Caleb won't find you here," he said, and his own voice sounded different, harder, like a promise made of iron. "I won't let him." He backed away slow. "I'm going to get you some water. I'll be right back." Inside the house, he moved with a purpose he hadn't felt in years. He filled a glass, grabbed one of Martha's old quilts, then stopped by his workshop. His eyes found the heavy bolt cutters on the shelf. The cold steel felt good in his hand. When he got back to the barn, he set the water and quilt down a few feet away from her. She eyed the bolt cutters with a new wave of fear. "This is for that," he said, nodding to the shackle. "This is to take it off." A flicker of something that wasn't terror crossed her face. Hope, maybe. She gave a small, shaky nod. He positioned the jaws of the cutters. With a loud crack that echoed in the barn, the chain snapped. The sound was violent, but it was the sound of freedom when he finally pried the cuff from her raw wrist. She just stared at her freed hand. Then she grabbed the water and drank like she'd been wandering the desert for a year. He just waited. He knew you couldn't force a story out of someone that broken. Finally, she spoke, her voice just a whisper. "He called us his flock. The story came out in pieces. Her name was Lily. She told him about a place deep in the mountains, a cult run by a man named Caleb, a prophet who promised salvation but delivered. At prison, the shackle wasn't a punishment. It was an honor, a sign that you belonged to him. She'd worn it for 2 years. She finally ran after her friend questioned Caleb and disappeared forever. She ran for 3 nights until she stumbled into his barn and collapsed as she spoke. Elias felt the last of his old life fall away. He was no longer a man living in the past. He was a witness, a guardian, the full weight of his decision to pull. Back that cloth settled on him. It was a burden, but it was also a purpose. He helped her to her feet and led her to the house. It had been a shell for 10 years. Just a place to sleep. Now it had to be a sanctuary. He found some of Martha's old clothes for her, a simple cotton shirt and jeans. While she showered, he made a phone call, not to 911. He called Jed Miller, the old county sheriff, retired now, but a man who understood the kind of trouble that festered in the quiet places. Jed just said, "I'll be there in an hour." When Lily came out, she looked different, cleaner, more human. She was swimming in Martha's clothes, but she looked safer. As dusk settled over the prairie, Elias took his rifle from the rack over the fireplace. He sat on the front porch, the rifle across his lap, and watched the dirt road. The silence he used to hide in was now a weapon. He was listening for any sound that didn't belong. He was no longer a man waiting for his own story to end. He was a man standing at the beginning of someone else's. But here's the thing. How many folks like Lily are still out there right now, hidden in the dark corners of the world? And how many men like Elias are sitting alone, thinking their story is over? Sometimes all it takes is one decision, one moment of not walking away, to change everything. So, let me ask you something. Who are you in this story? Are you the one running for your life, or the one who stands their ground and opens the door? If this story meant something to you, give it a like, maybe share it, let it sit with you for a while. And if you want to hear more stories like this, the real ones, the rough ones, the kind that stay with you, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Because out here, stories don't end, they just keep riding on.